The chemotherapy drip made a steady beeping sound as I sat alone in the treatment room. It was March 15th, my first session after the stage 4 colon cancer diagnosis, and I'd just received a text from my son Thomas. "Dad, you're being dramatic. The doctors said it's treatable. Call us when you stop guilting everyone." At 63, I'd expected to be enjoying retirement, maybe playing golf or traveling. Instead, I was beginning a battle that would define the next 18 months of my life. My children, Thomas and Emma, lived 10 and 15 minutes away, respectively, but they might as well have been on another planet. "Mr. Sullivan," Nurse Sarah said, adjusting my IV, "is someone coming to drive you home?" "Uber," I replied, trying to smile. "My kids are busy with work." She frowned slightly, checking my vitals. "The first session can be rough. You should have someone with you tonight." "I'll be fine," I assured her, the same way I'd been assuring myself since the diagnosis 3 weeks ago. The 3-hour session gave me plenty of time to remember better days. Thomas's baseball games, where I'd never missed a single pitch. Emma's dance recitals, where I'd sat in the front row with flowers. The college tuitions I'd paid, the down payments I'd helped with, the countless times I'd been there. Until now. My phone buzzed again. Emma this time. "Dad, we can't just drop everything because you're sick. The kids have activities, Mark has his business, and I'm swamped with clients." I put the phone away, watching the medicine that might save my life drip slowly into my veins. The treatment room was full of other patients, most with family members or friends beside them. An elderly woman across from me had what looked like 3 generations surrounding her, all playing cards and laughing. "First time?" the man next to me asked. His wife sat beside him, knitting what looked like a sweater. "That obvious." He smiled. "The alone part. Don't worry, the cancer support group meets Wednesdays. They become your second family." As the drugs worked their way through my system, I thought about family. About how I'd built my life around my children, how every decision since their mother died 15 years ago had been about them. The house I kept because it was close to them, the retirement I timed to help with grandchildren, the investments I structured for their inheritance. The side effects hit halfway through the session. Nurse Sarah brought anti-nausea medication and a warm blanket, showing more care in those moments than my children had since the diagnosis. "Mr. Sullivan," she said quietly, "we have resources, support groups, counseling services. Cancer isn't something you should face alone." I nodded, too nauseated to respond. My phone buzzed again. Thomas's wife, Jennifer. "The kids are asking about Easter dinner. Are you still hosting? If you're not up to it, we can do it at our house. Let us know." Easter dinner. They couldn't visit during chemo, but they wanted to know about Easter dinner. After the session, the Uber driver helped me into his car. His kindness, a complete stranger, made my eyes water. Or maybe it was the chemo. I chose to blame the chemo. At home, I sat in my empty living room, surrounded by family photos that felt like artifacts from another life. Photos of graduations, weddings, birthdays, moments when we were a family, not strangers connected by obligation and DNA. The nausea hit hard around midnight. As I knelt in the bathroom, I remembered all the nights I'd held Thomas's head when he had stomach flu, all the times I'd comforted Emma through midnight fevers. Now, in my moment of need, I had only the cold bathroom tile for company. Wednesday came, and despite feeling like death warmed over, I went to the cancer support group. The room was full of stories similar to mine. People discovering who really stands by you when things get tough. "Family's funny that way," said Margaret, a breast cancer survivor. "Sometimes strangers become family, and family becomes strangers." The group became my lifeline. We shared treatment experiences, side effects, and the complicated emotions of fighting cancer while dealing with family dynamics. They understood without judgment, supported without obligation. Weeks passed. The side effects got worse, but the loneliness was harder than the nausea. Thomas and Emma sent occasional texts, usually about practical matters or future plans. Never about the present, never about the daily battle I was fighting. Dad, we need the holiday schedule for the kids' school planning. Dad, can you sign these insurance papers? Dad, are you still planning to help with Tommy's college fund? One particularly rough day, after a treatment that left me shaking, I called Thomas. It went to voicemail. I called Emma. Straight to voicemail. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, too dizzy to drive, waiting for an Uber, wondering how I'd raise children who could be so distant. Nurse Sarah found me there. Mr. Sullivan, are you okay? I wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. But I nodded because that's what fathers do. We stay strong. We don't burden others. We handle things. She didn't believe me. I'm off shift. Let me drive you home. You don't have to. I know. I want to. That drive home became a turning point. Sarah talked about her own father's battle with cancer, about how it changed her perspective on nursing, on life. She was the first person who had really talked to me, not about schedules or logistics or future plans, but about the now, about the fear and pain and loneliness. The next few months fell into a rhythm. Chemo sessions every other week, support group meetings on Wednesdays, occasional texts from my children about everything except what mattered. Sarah often checked on me between treatments, bringing soup or just company. Thomas and Emma sent a joint email in May. Dad, we know this is hard, but you have to understand we have our own lives. We can't put everything on hold. The kids miss you at their activities, but we know you're focused on getting better. Getting better. As if cancer was a cold, something you got over with rest and chicken soup. As if I was choosing treatment over them, rather than fighting for my life while they chose everything else over me. Summer brought a new challenge, my grandson Tommy's baseball championship. I dragged myself there despite feeling awful, sat in the bleachers alone, and cheered. Thomas and Jennifer acted surprised to see me, made awkward small talk, then hurried away after the game. Tommy waved from a distance. Maybe next weekend we can visit, Thomas called over his shoulder. But next weekend never came. The support group understood. They shared similar stories. Children too busy, family too uncomfortable, friends who disappeared. We became each other's cheerleaders, celebrating small victories and supporting through setbacks. Sarah became a regular presence in my life, stopping by with groceries, helping with paperwork, just sitting with me through rough nights. She didn't have to, but she did. Sometimes the people who choose to stay mean more than those who are supposed to stay but don't. In August, Emma sent a text that summed up everything. Dad, Jennifer said you're spending a lot of time with some nurse. Don't you think you should focus on getting better instead of dating? And maybe save some energy for your actual family? My actual family. The ones who couldn't find time to visit during 6 months of chemotherapy. The ones who lived minutes away but might as well have been on Mars. The ones who thought cancer was an inconvenience to their schedules. The irony was that Sarah wasn't dating me. She was just being human, showing compassion, doing what family should do. But even that was too much for my children to understand. September brought better news. The tumors were shrinking. I celebrated with my support group and Sarah. Thomas and Emma sent congratulatory texts, followed immediately by questions about Thanksgiving plans. One evening, sitting with Sarah after a particularly difficult treatment, I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. Did I fail as a father? Is that why they're like this? She took my hand, her touch warm and comforting. Sometimes people fail as children. It's not always about the parenting. October marked my last chemotherapy session. The support group threw a small party. Sarah brought cupcakes. My phone stayed silent. Thomas and Emma were at a school fundraiser. That night, looking at myself in the mirror, I saw someone different. Not just the physical changes from cancer, but something deeper. I saw someone who had learned hard truths about family, about love, about what matters when everything else falls away. November brought the all clear from my oncologist. Cancer-free. I celebrated by taking Sarah to dinner, our first actual date. She'd seen me at my worst and stayed. That meant something. The next day, Thomas called, the first call in months. "Dad, we heard from Jennifer's friend at the hospital that you're dating Sarah. Don't you think that's inappropriate? She was your nurse. And what about Mom's memory?" I listened to his concerns, his sudden interest in my life now that it wasn't about cancer anymore. When he finished, I said simply, "Where were you, Thomas? For 18 months, where were you?" The silence on the other end said everything. December brought a certified letter from my children's lawyer, expressing concerns about my relationship with Sarah and its potential impact on family inheritance matters. I sat in my study, looking at that letter, then at the photo wall of my so-called family. 18 months of fighting cancer alone had taught me more about love, family, and loyalty than 63 years of blood relations. The lawyer's letter sat on my desk like a grotesque Christmas card. My children, who couldn't find time to drive 10 minutes during my cancer battle, had somehow found time to retain legal counsel about their inheritance. "They're worried about your mental state," my own lawyer, Michael, explained during our meeting. "They're suggesting that your relationship with Sarah indicates impaired judgment due to trauma from cancer treatment." I looked out Michael's office window at the winter snow, remembering all the Christmas mornings, all the presents, all the sacrifices. Impaired judgment. I spent 18 months fighting for my life while they couldn't spare an hour. Michael, who had handled my affairs for 20 years, shook his head. "Want my unofficial advice? Rewrite the will. Not out of spite, but because people show you who they are in hard times." That evening, Sarah came over with soup, still taking care of me, even though I was no longer her patient. She found me surrounded by old photo albums. "Looking for answers?" she asked, settling beside me. "Looking for where I went wrong," I replied, staring at a photo of Thomas's college graduation. "When did money become more important than morality?" Sarah pointed to a recent photo from the support group. "Maybe start looking at where you went right instead. At the family you chose, not the one you were given." January brought another legal letter, this time questioning my competency to manage my own affairs. The irony wasn't lost on me. During cancer, they trusted me to handle everything alone. Now that I was healthy and happy, they questioned my judgment. The support group listened as I shared my situation during our weekly meeting. Margaret, now cancer-free for 6 months, spoke up. "Make your decisions based on love, not hurt. But remember, love doesn't mean enabling bad behavior." I spent the next week reviewing my finances. The house Thomas and Emma assumed they'd inherit. The investments they'd counted on. The retirement accounts they'd factored into their futures. All of it built on decades of my work, my sacrifices, my planning. Sarah found me late one night, surrounded by financial documents. "You're not sleeping," she observed. "I'm thinking about legacy," I said. "Not just money, but what message my choices send." She made us tea, her presence a comfort I'd grown to cherish. "The greatest legacy is teaching people about consequences," she said quietly. "Sometimes love means letting people face the results of their choices." February arrived with a dinner invitation from Thomas and Emma, the first in over a year. They wanted to clear the air and discuss family matters. I arrived at Thomas's house to find a family intervention. Emma's husband, Mark, Jennifer, and even my sister, Susan, whom they'd flown in from Florida, were there. "Dad," Emma started, her voice practiced, "we're worried about you. This relationship with Sarah. It's not healthy. You're vulnerable after cancer." Thomas added, "We know we weren't there as much as we could have been. We had our reasons. But this isn't about that." I looked at their concerned faces, all arranged in a perfect semicircle of judgment. Actually, this is exactly about that. Where was this concern during chemo? Where was this family gathering when I needed rides home from treatment? We had responsibilities, Jennifer interjected. Work, children, commitments. And I had cancer, I replied quietly. I had fear, pain, and loneliness. Sarah was there. My support group was there. Strangers showed more compassion than my own children. Susan, who hadn't visited once during my illness, leaned forward. James, we're worried you're making decisions based on emotion rather than reason. No, I said, standing up. For the first time, I'm making decisions based on truth rather than obligation. The next day, I met with Michael to revise my will. The house would go to a cancer support foundation, providing housing for patients during treatment. Most of my assets would be split between cancer research and a scholarship fund for oncology nursing students. Thomas and Emma would each receive a small inheritance, enough to remember me by, but not enough to forget what matters more than money. They'll contest it, Michael warned. Let them, I replied. Some lessons are worth fighting for. March marked 1 year since my first chemotherapy session. Sarah and I celebrated with dinner at the small Italian restaurant where we'd had our first real date. Any regrets? She asked as we shared tiramisu. About us? Never. About them. Only that it took cancer to show me the truth. My phone buzzed. Emma. Dad, we heard rumors about changes to your will. We need to talk about family legacy. Family legacy. As if legacy was only about money, not about character, not about being there when it matters. April brought spring and new beginnings. Sarah and I moved in together, combining our lives in ways that felt natural, earned. The support group celebrated with a housewarming party, my chosen family filling our home with laughter and genuine joy. Thomas drove past several times, watching but never stopping. Emma sent increasingly desperate texts about family traditions and responsibilities. I responded to one. Where were these family traditions during my treatments? Where were these responsibilities when I needed my children? Her reply came hours later. That's not fair. We were dealing with our own lives. Exactly, I texted back. And now I'm dealing with mine. May arrived with legal papers. Thomas and Emma contesting my right to make changes to my will, claiming emotional manipulation by Sarah. During our next support group meeting, I shared the latest development. The room fell silent until Margaret spoke. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the understanding that actions have consequences. Sarah found me in the garden later, planting tomatoes, something I'd promised myself I'd do if I survived cancer. You know they'll make this ugly, she said. It was already ugly, I replied, pressing seeds into warm earth. They just didn't notice because it was covered in money. June brought the first legal hearing. Thomas and Emma sat with their lawyer, occasionally glancing at me with mixtures of hurt and anger. Sarah sat beside me, her presence a reminder of who had earned the right to be there. Their lawyer painted a picture of a vulnerable cancer survivor manipulated by a predatory nurse. My lawyer presented 18 months of text messages, showing their absence during my illness and their sudden interest in my life when money was threatened. The judge, a cancer survivor herself, saw through the facade. This court cannot force adult children to care for sick parents, she said, but neither can it force parents to reward indifference. Outside the courthouse, Thomas approached. Dad, this isn't you. You're not vindictive. No, I agreed. I'm just finally being honest, with you and with myself. Summer arrived, bringing with it a sense of peace I hadn't expected. Sarah and I traveled, enjoying life in ways cancer had made us appreciate more deeply. The support group continued to meet, sharing stories of recovery, resilience, and rebuilding. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I still looked at old family photos. But now I saw them differently, not as memories to cling to, but as lessons learned. Cancer hadn't just changed my body, it had changed my understanding of what family truly means. It's not always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up, who stays, who holds your hand through the hardest nights. Sometimes family is found in hospital rooms, support group circles, and the hearts of those who choose to care when others choose not to. By late summer, word of my story had spread through cancer support networks. Other patients facing similar family abandonment reached out, sharing their experiences. What started as personal pain evolved into something more meaningful. "You should speak at the Cancer Survivor Symposium," Sarah suggested one evening as we sat on our patio. "Your story might help others set boundaries with absent family members." The invitation came shortly after a keynote speech at the National Cancer Survivors Conference. Thomas somehow heard about it and sent an email. "Dad, are you really going to air our family's private matters in public? Haven't you punished us enough?" I read the email twice, struck by his use of the word punished. As if my cancer had been an inconvenience to them, and my honesty about their absence was the real crime. The conference hall was packed with survivors, caregivers, and medical professionals. As I took the podium, I saw Sarah in the front row, next to members of my support group, the family that chose to be there. "Cancer shows you two things," I began: who you are and who others are. Sometimes both revelations hurt more than the disease itself. During the speech, I noticed Emma slip into the back of the hall. She left before I finished, but her presence suggested something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps regret. The next day, she sent a text. "I heard you talk about loneliness during chemo. Why didn't you tell us?" "I did," I replied. "You were too busy to listen." Autumn brought changes. The Cancer Support Foundation I'd established with my revised will began its work, providing housing for patients whose families lived far away or who, like me, faced treatment alone despite having family nearby. Thomas's son, Tommy, now in high school, started volunteering at the foundation's housing facility. He never mentioned it to his father, but Sarah saw him helping patients with their groceries, sitting with them during lonely evenings. "He has your heart," she observed. "Sometimes generations skip." October marked my 1-year anniversary of being cancer-free. The support group organized a celebration, complete with a cake decorated with the words "family by choice." During the party, Margaret pulled me aside. "Your story helped me stand up to my own children," she said. "I stopped feeling guilty for their choices." That evening, I received an unexpected visit from Jennifer, Thomas's wife. She came alone, carrying a photo album. "Tommy showed me pictures from the foundation," she said, sitting in my living room. "He said something that hit home. He asked why we had time to visit his sick friend's father in the hospital, but couldn't visit his own grandfather during cancer." I let the silence stretch, remembering all the unanswered calls during treatment. "I was wrong," Jennifer continued. "We were all wrong. But Thomas, he can't admit it. Pride or shame, maybe both." "Pride and shame don't cure cancer," I replied. "They don't sit with you during chemo or hold your hand through night sweats." She looked at Sarah's shoes by the door, the shared life evident in our home. "You found real love during the worst time. We should have been happy for you." November brought another legal attempt from Thomas, this time claiming Sarah had violated professional ethics by dating a former patient. The nursing board dismissed the complaint immediately, noting that our relationship began after my treatment ended. During Thanksgiving, Sarah and I hosted dinner for the support group and foundation residents. The house filled with genuine warmth, shared stories, and the kind of family bonds that grow from choice rather than obligation. Emma drove by twice but didn't stop. Later, she posted on social media about toxic family situations and narcissistic parents, turning herself into the victim of her own choices. Should I respond? I asked Sarah as we cleaned up after dinner. Your silence says more than any response could, she answered. Let your actions speak. December brought snow and unexpected news. Tommy had applied for a volunteer leadership position at the foundation, writing an essay about watching his grandfather fight cancer alone. During those months, he wrote, I learned that family isn't about who you're born to, but who you choose to be there for. I failed my grandfather then. I won't fail others now. The essay found its way to Thomas through the foundation's newsletter. He called for the first time in months. Dad, his voice cracked slightly, Tommy's essay. I didn't know he felt that way. About what we did, what we didn't do. Children see more than we think, I replied. They learn from what we do, not what we say. The conversation ended awkwardly, but something had shifted. Sometimes it takes the next generation to bridge the gaps we create. Christmas arrived with cards from foundation residents, support group members, and patients I'd met through speaking engagements. Each one reminded me that family can be built on foundations stronger than blood. Sarah and I celebrated quietly, exchanging simple gifts. She gave me a journal she'd kept during my treatment. Notes about my courage, my persistence, my refusal to grow bitter. You taught me about grace, she wrote in the final entry. Not just as a patient, but as a father dealing with absence. New Year's Eve brought unexpected visitors. Tommy and Jennifer arrived just before midnight, carrying dessert and tentative smiles. Mom said you always made hot chocolate on New Year's Eve, Tommy said. I remember that from before. We sat in the kitchen, the awkwardness slowly melting like marshmallows in hot chocolate. Jennifer shared Tommy's foundation stories, his growing interest in medical school. He talks about you all the time, she said softly. About learning what matters by seeing what we did wrong. As midnight approached, Tommy asked about the support group photo on our fridge. I told him about each person, their battles, their strength. That's real family, he said, understanding in his young voice. The ones who show up. The year had taught me that family isn't a fixed concept. It's not defined by DNA or inheritance, by tradition or obligation. Family is built in hospital rooms and support group circles, in quiet acts of kindness and conscious choices to be present. Thomas and Emma might never fully understand or accept their role in our fractured relationship. But through Tommy, I saw hope for a different kind of legacy. One built on awareness, compassion, and the courage to acknowledge hard truths. Sarah squeezed my hand as we watched the year's first snowfall. Sometimes, she said, the family we build is stronger than the family we're born into. Looking at Tommy, who chose to be there when his father couldn't, I understood that healing comes in unexpected ways, sometimes through the very wounds that once threatened to break us. As my second year of remission approached, I received an invitation that made me pause. Tommy was graduating high school, and despite everything, he wanted me to give a speech at his graduation party. He specifically asked for you, not Thomas. Jennifer explained during a foundation visit. He's been writing about you for his college essays, about learning what matters through watching what we got wrong. The party was held in Thomas's backyard, the same place where family gatherings had once been routine. Sarah came with me, her presence both a support and a statement. Emma was there, keeping her distance but watching. Her children, who barely knew me now, played nearby, occasionally glancing curiously at the grandfather who had become a stranger. Tommy's speech surprised everyone. 2 years ago, my grandfather fought cancer alone because we were too busy for him. Today, he runs a foundation helping others not face that same loneliness. He taught me that our mistakes don't define us. How we learn from them does. Thomas stood in the corner, his face a mix of emotions. Later, he approached awkwardly. Dad, Tommy's speech. He's right. We got it wrong. All of it. Yes, I said simply. You did. Can we? Is there a way to fix this? I looked at Tommy, at the young man who understood what his father couldn't. Fix isn't the right word. Build something new, maybe, but it has to be real, not about inheritance or obligation. The foundation continued to grow, helping more patients find support during treatment. Tommy became a regular volunteer, his presence a bridge between past and present. Sarah and I married in a small ceremony, surrounded by our chosen family, support group members, foundation residents, and people who'd proven that love is an action, not just a blood tie. Emma didn't come, but sent a card. "I hope you're happy, Dad. I'm trying to understand." Thomas and Jennifer attended briefly, standing awkwardly at the back. But Tommy was there fully, helping serve cake, sharing stories, being present in ways his parents were still learning. One evening, as Sarah and I sat with our support group family, someone asked if I regretted being so firm with my children during their absence. "No," I replied. "Sometimes love means holding people accountable. Sometimes it means letting them face the consequences of their choices." Tommy started pre-med that fall, inspired by his volunteer work at the foundation. During his first break, he brought his new girlfriend to meet us. "Grandpa helped me understand what matters," he told her. "Sometimes life's hardest lessons come from watching people get it wrong." Thomas and Emma slowly, awkwardly, began making small steps. Not for inheritance or obligation, but perhaps because Tommy showed them a better way. The foundation became my legacy, not the one I planned, but the one that mattered. It grew from pain into purpose, from absence into presence. Because sometimes the family we build from broken pieces becomes stronger than the one that broke. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the courage to acknowledge truth, face consequences, and learn to build something real from the ruins of what was lost.